Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the 3DO Experience, the 3DO retrospective podcast where we talk about the 3DO console, the company behind it, and everything in between. I am Bill, and this is Threk. How you doing, Threk?
Hello, Bill. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, audience. I'm doing okay. This morning I fucked up my elbow because you ever do that thing where you go to sit down on the toilet, you think the seat's there and the seat isn't there, it's just the bowl, and you try to catch yourself, and then as I was catching myself, my elbow smacked the kitchen sink, which is right next to the toilet, and it's better than it was, but it still hurts. But other than that, I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. How are you, Bill? You having a decent 24 so far? We're not very
Um,
far in, but
yeah.
how's it hanging?
It's going fine. I got very drunk New Year's Eve. Alex wasn't impressed, and she just wanted to go to bed the
You trying
entire
to
time.
impress her by getting drunk? What the hell's
No,
wrong with you?
I wasn't trying to impress her. She just wasn't impressed by my fucking shenanigans that happened. Because I got stupidly wasted and was laughing at Game Grumps more than I should have because we were
You
we were
tried to.
just basically we decided not to do anything and we just hung out and watched crappy movies, and then once we ran out of crappy movies we just put on YouTube, and Game Grumps ended up being what we watched. And
Like
I thought it
old
was
Game Grumps, new Game Grumps, what are we talking?
yeah, it was newer. They were playing some indie game called like Super Bunny Man, and I thought their playthrough was hilarious. I'm not sure if Alex did or not, but I thought it was great.
See, I
um
feel like Game Grumps haven't been funny in a long time. I don't know. It just I try to rewatch it, or like a lot of the older stuff still hits, right? Especially like the early Dan era stuff. But
yeah,
it just now, I don't know. It feels too much like a business, if that makes any sense. Like it
see,
just I don't know, man.
the game they were playing is like one of those like indie games that's like ultra frustrating, like you're gonna die a lot. So I was just, the shit that was happening to them in the game, I think like brought the funny out in them again, because there'd be like points where like they were just getting exasperated trying to get through the level. Like they'd be like doing great and one of them would just fuck up and die, and they'd be like, great, thanks
Yeah.
Dan, or like thanks Aaron. Just fun shit
Yeah.
like that.
I mean, sometimes it's dependent on the game that they're playing, for sure.
Yeah,
But it's like how many times have they done Wheel of Fortune? They keep milking that cow. As somebody who plays a lot of Wheel of Fortune games myself, it feels like they've kind of milked the cow on that one. Like it's done, it's
yeah,
over. And then they do videos of them watching themselves or watching compilations of that. It's like, no, no, don't want to see that. So,
yeah.
but I don't really watch them anymore. I don't even watch JonTron anymore.
See,
The
I
whole
never watched JonTron, like period. So
Yeah. I mean, the whole controversy with him a few years ago was rough, and I'm not getting into that. Um, but it is what it is. His flex seal videos are funny.
see,
I'll give
my
him that.
favorite one of my favorite jokes is just because of all the recent events. It was a picture of one of the normal boots panels, and it was like Peanut Butter Gamer,
Hmm.
Pro Jared, the completionist, and then JonTron, and it was just like it's like it's like PBG has no idea what he's surrounded by right now.
I love PBG. That man's still going.
He just
You
had a
know.
kid. Like he's
Yeah,
just like super wholesome and just
he is.
reacts to
I've
the dumbest shit.
this thing. It's like I've never been a fan of PBG. I don't find his content funny or engaging in any way. But he seems like a really really nice, sweet guy.
Yeah,
So I'll give him that. Even though
I
I
like
just basically said his content is trash, which I mean, it is what it is. But he seems like such a lovely guy. He's like, this is gonna be a weird comparison. He's like Keanu Reeves. He's just kind of coasting on the fact that he's a good guy, that who cares if what he does isn't really that good. I say that as I've been playing more of Cyberpunk.
yeah.
And the more I play of it, I'm like, yeah, Keanu Reeves is not a good actor. Like, not at all. Like, just so bad. But he has such a presence about him that I think it's okay.
Yeah. No, this that's basically how my New Year's went. I recently, I think I might have alluded to it the last episode, but I recently acquired a 3D another 3DO. I now have an FC10 as well
Hmm.
because my port.
American or Japanese?
It's actually an American one. I was surprised when it came in because I was expecting it to be an import. Um, yeah, because my port FC1, the disk drive is just it's been going for a while now, and it's getting to the point now where just a lot of any game with a lot of full motion video just isn't going to happen. Like it can't play it refused to play Crash and Burn. Like can't play like Gex struggles to get through the opening cutscene. Just a whole bunch of stuff like that. And I was like, oh no. So I'm like, I'm gonna retire this guy into minimal use because there's certain games like Road Rash that like I need an FC1 to get the full effect with. But I decided to retire that one to special occasions, and I got an FC10, and it works perfectly.
Yeah.
Even though the sellers gave me a Sega Genesis controller with it, which I still thought was kind of funny.
Does that work?
No, but it has the same port, so maybe he just grabbed it thinking it was a 3DO controller and sent it over.
Did you try plugging it in?
Yeah, it didn't work. I was like, that's weird. And then I plugged it into a Genesis and it worked. So I was like, it was some weird third-party Genesis controller that kind of looked like a 3DO controller.
Now, what would be amazing is if you plugged an Atari 2600 controller into a 3DO and it worked.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
I also got a 7800 recently too, and the guy who I bought it from forgot to give me the controller, but I wasn't too upset because I was like, I'm just going to use a Genesis controller anyways. So.
Or you could try to hunt down that European one.
That's my goal for eventually, because I really don't care that much about the joystick, because the 7800 joystick is horrendous. But
yeah, well, and plus the games that it has aren't really made for those. They're more D-pad style games.
Yeah,
you know, at one point I downloaded the ROM set for the 7800 and played it on my computer, and kind of went through a good chunk of the games, and I was like, it is what it is.
I feel like if it came out when it was supposed to come out, it would have been a hit, but it came out after the NES and no one cared.
Exactly. Though Ninja Golf is pretty great. That is a solid game. In fact, I believe that's on the Atari 50th anniversary collection thing.
I think it is.
Yeah, because what I like about that collection is it doesn't just do 2600 like just about every other Atari compilation. It does everything. You even get Jaguar games, and I love that.
The best way to play Atari carts.
I've played more of Atari carts than I dare to mention, but it's a really good game, so I don't care. But yeah, good stuff with that. I don't think I would ever bother getting an Atari 7800. I think if there was one retro console that I'd go out of my way to buy and collect everything, it'd probably be the Master System.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I've thought about it. Because you know me, Sega fanboy.
It's another console that the best way to use it is a Genesis controller.
Oh, probably. And I have a bunch of Genesis controllers already. So
the Master System controller is bad in a lot of ways.
It's okay.
The D-pad is very meh.
Yeah, but you know, it's not as good as like an NES controller. But for all the NES clone controllers, it's not the worst one.
No, it's more just kind of like the fact that the Genesis controller exists just retroactively makes it worse.
Yeah, I mean, I think the worst thing the Master System does is its pause button is on the console.
On the console.
Yeah, that's the worst. That's probably the worst thing. Because then, like, when you emulate it, you have to program that, and it's weird.
Yeah, my favorite part about that is like the power-based converter for the Genesis also has a pause button on it just because they had to for like compatibility's sake.
Yeah. Weird choice, but you know, is what it is. So speaking of weird choices, what's the topic for today, Bill?
Well, before we get into that, I actually wanted to we did a poll recently that I think we should announce before we
oh yes. Yes, we do.
So despite well, before I get into that, for our last episode, we'd mentioned we wanted to have the fans pick our next game we were going to play. So we gave a couple options this time around. Our choices, our choices for the poll were The Incredible Machine, Icebreaker, and then for lulz, I threw in Shanghai Triple Threat.
Yeah, and fuck you, Aaron. Fuck you, Aaron.
Despite Aaron's best efforts,
I'm glad Tommy's dead. No, I'm kidding.
Tragic.
R.I.P.
But aside from that, Despite a valiant, sudden comeback from the Incredible Machine towards the end of the vote, Icebreaker was the clear favorite from start to finish on this one. So for next week, we will be playing Icebreaker, and I have a copy
Yeah.
on order. Hopefully, it'll be here by then.
I already have my copy. I'm showing the camera because we're gonna try to do video sometime in the future. Probably won't be this one, but we'll try it in the future. I even bought a
Yeah.
nice webcam for it. But yeah, as the front cover says, "Blast them, smash them, trick them. You alone can destroy all pyramids." You know, you're probably destroying pyramid schemes with this game. I think so.
Yeah.
You're doing a good service for the community. I have played a fair amount of this game already, so I won't have to do too much research, but it'll be nice to actually sit down and play it more properly. So thank you everyone who voted. We greatly appreciate it. We thankfully didn't have to review a fucking mahjong game and try to make that an hour. So hopefully there'll be enough material to talk about Icebreaker. I imagine the people who voted on that were probably like the other 3DO content creators out there, because Icebreaker is one of those more kind of notable 3DO games. That would be my guess.
It's one of the ones that you always see in the compilations of like gameplay for the
Yeah.
console.
Yeah, because it looks cool. You know,
I really wanted to get a long box for it, but it was too expensive, so I just went with the jewel case.
Yeah, same. And having the jewel case helps because because it has on the back a nice like diagram of all the different colors and everything. But we'll go into that next week, everybody.
I did also, while I was purchasing that, I also found a long box copy of the Incredible Machine, so that will also be coming in eventually, and we'll probably be covering that one shortly at some point as well.
Let me grab it. There it is. Look at that beat. Oh yeah. I have a lot of things to say about the Incredible Machine, but you guys didn't vote on it, so I'm not saying a word.
Yeah, we'll get to it eventually. But yeah, for this episode though, we won't be covering a game per se for the console. Instead, we're going to be talking about the 3DO's most interesting feature in the fact that, as we've stated before, the 3DO was not standard in any way imaginable, and you could pretty much make whatever you wanted for it. So the 3DO has a lot of different controllers that were available for it, and there's a lot to say about them, let's just say.
Yes, there is.
So I kind of left this up to you to like kind of go through what controllers you wanted to discuss. I kind of found a bunch just by browsing the web that I felt like would be interesting to talk about. So I don't know if you wanted to like try like back and forth maybe, or like just kind of go through some of the notable ones. Or
well, I think we can start with the one I have actual experience with, which is the standard Panasonic FZ10 controller that came with mine. I have yet to buy another 3DO controller. So the basic 3DO controller that comes with the system is on the surface quite simple, really. It's essentially a Sega Genesis controller with some SNES stuff on top.
I always like to call it like the bastard love child of a Super Nintendo and Genesis controller.
In a weird way, because it goes for that kind of curved look that like the Sega Genesis controller has. It has the A, B, and C buttons kind of lined up in a line. Weirdly enough, I find the buttons here more comfortable, probably because they're smaller, so you don't have to hop your thumb around. And then the B button right in the middle has a nice divot in the center, so you can kind of keep track. Like if you've ever noticed with computer keyboards, J and F have that little raised line, so you know where your hand should be, which is very cute. You got your D-pad over here, which is it's no Sega Genesis D-pad. I can safely say that thing is a thing of beauty. This thing is okay. Nice thing I can say about it. You have the P and X buttons down here, but on this version of the controller, they're little rubber dots for some reason, and they work like TV remote buttons essentially. And then you have L and R on the top, which are okay, but some games don't even really use them. But probably the most unique thing about the 3DO controller is this other little port that is on top of the controller that you see it and you're thinking, what the hell is that? So the original 3DO, or all models of the 3DO, only have one controller port. I'm still not sure why they decided to do that. So they give you the second controller port on the controller, so you can plug it in, and then you can sort of daisy chain. If I could do this correctly, you can then like daisy chain all your controllers together, which
And it
is like,
works up to 16 controllers, I've heard,
yeah,
which
and
is
it's like,
absurd.
it seems like something that was like somebody threw that out in the boardroom, is like, that's an idea, and it is an idea, but I feel like it's a weird idea that they only pursued to give it something different, because there's really no reason for it. You know what I mean?
My theory is it was either them trying to be innovative for no reason, or it was part of the system's universal like standard design where they wanted every system despite manufacturer to be basically the same, so they just kind of standardized it as the one controller port per console. And then their way of getting around that was the daisy chaining method, and that way, like, no matter what console you had, like, everything would still be compatible in a sense.
But they could have standardized 2 controller ports.
Yeah, I feel like they were like it might also have been a cost cutting method for all we know.
Maybe, because what old game console doesn't have 2 controller ports?
The
Like, even
only
the
other
Atari 2600 has 2 controller ports on it.
the only other notable console I can think of off the top of my head is the TurboGrafx 16, which also only had one controller port. You
Oh,
had to
really?
buy you would have to buy a what is essentially an early version of like the Switch, like GameCube, the Wii U GameCube controller adapter, where you would essentially plug it in. It would give you like 5 slots out of the one
Uh,
controller port.
oh, like the PlayStation multi-tap,
Yeah, it was
or
essentially you had
the
to
or
buy
the
'em.
the NES 4 score.
Yep, or the Genesis
Yeah.
had one as well. Basically, it was
Oh,
just an
yeah.
adapter to get around the one controller port on the console.
Yeah, because very few games had more than 2-player multiplayer at that time.
Yes. One fun quirk though about the daisy chaining is like I think we've alluded to this in previous episodes, but like it leads to some funny situations where like say you're playing a multiplayer game and you're player one, and say player two pisses you off or something, you can just unplug him,
Yeah,
and in the process also screw over players three, four, or five.
up to 16.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, it just seems like yeah, it's like it's trying to be efficient and give it like a quirk, but people just always point to it and think that's weird. Why did they do that? You know,
it's
I'm
one
sure
of
it
the
works just fine, but you know,
I so in my experience, I've only played up to 2 players, but like it works fine. It's amazing that the 3DO has enough power to power that many controllers out of one port.
yeah.
Um, Another thing that's interesting about the standard 3DO controller is it's the same controller that was also released for the FC1, minus the headphone jack has been removed, probably a cost saving measure.
Oh yeah, I
Um,
forgot the original had a headphone jack, and I believe the P and X, or Start and Select, were like little like lines like the NES controllers were.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like that. And what was funny about the headphone jack was it didn't actually mute the game, so you'd have to mute the TV separately to use the headphones properly.
That's so weird. Like, I've never used the headphone jack on the Sega Genesis, for example, like the Model 1. I remember as a kid thinking that was a weird feature to have, but nowadays as an adult, it's like, oh, that's actually kind of brilliant.
Well, yeah, that's how you get stereo audio out of it.
True.
Um, but yeah, and then I believe also the Sanyo 3DO used the same controller. It just said Sanyo rather. Actually, I think I've read it said Panasonic, but
Okay.
I'm not 100% sure on that. I've read I think I read somewhere that even the Sanyos had a Panasonic controller for
Mm-hmm.
some reason.
It's possible.
Um,
So, what
but
is your thought on the usage, like as you've used it? Like, what is your opinion on the controller itself?
so to me, what makes a controller functional is that you never have to look down at it while playing a game to like figure out what you're doing. And for the most part, the 3DO controller succeeds in pretty much everything it does. Like, there's never been an occasion playing a game on 3DO where I had to like finagle with the controller to figure out what everything does. You can pretty much figure it out just by using your hands and looking at the screen. The one exception is fighting games because of the inherent design flaw of the system doesn't have enough buttons to properly play a fighting game.
Exactly. Like there's a reason they made the 6-button Genesis controller, for example.
Yep. Yeah, the Super Nintendo kind of gets away with it because it had enough buttons. You just had to use them in a really weird way for the time, but that was
Yeah,
just
'cause wasn't it Street Fighter 2 Champion Edition on the Genesis? If you push the start button, you'd swap between punches and kicks.
mhm. It was
Yeah.
just a workaround how you'd get around it because the Genesis later released like the prototype for what I still say is the greatest 2D controller of all time with the Saturn, which was the 6-button Genesis controller, which essentially gave a second row of buttons on top, which to me that was pretty ingenious for the time, even though a lot of games don't really take advantage of it.
One game that uses it really well that you wouldn't think is Comic Zone.
Yes, no, it actually really does, and
Yeah. Saves me a lot of hassle, even though I still die on the second level anyways.
yeah,
Oh
the
wait,
best
no,
way to
I've made it to the third level once.
the farthest I made it in Comic Zone, just to go off topic for a minute, is the level where Mortius lights the fucking comic on fire, and then like jumped off screen and died, and I was like, oh, I guess that's it.
Yeah, it's a really good game. It's just a shame it's so ridiculously difficult.
Yeah, the best way to play that game is the invincibility code. I have no shame in
Yes.
admitting that.
Oh god, yeah.
But going
But
back now to 3DO controllers,
but yeah,
um,
but do you like how it feels?
oh yeah, it's perfectly comfortable.
Okay.
It feels like a Super Nintendo controller, and that's perfectly fine to me.
Yeah, because for me, the biggest issue really is the D-pad itself. I find the D-pad to be too small. You know,
Yeah,
it feels like the size of maybe like a more modern D-pad, you know? Like looking like comparing it to say my little 8-bit do D-pad. They're kind of similar in size, but if you think about back then, the Genesis and Super Nintendo D-pads were a fairly good size,
mhm,
and they're very comfortable to use, both of them, I think. And then even going into the Saturn, like those, like especially the Model 2 controller, that D-pad is
perfection.
an, yeah, literally. So this one is just it's too small. So say in games like Wolfenstein or whatever, like after a couple hours, like my thumb actually does get fatigued and it gets kind of tired because it feels like you really have to, just the way my thumb moves on the D-pad is just really uncomfortable for me, you know. But the buttons, I mean, the buttons are okay. Often I have to look down to be like, which one's P, which one's X. I could never remember. And
Yeah,
it's funny how the controller, some of the buttons they have the like the play, pause, stop, rewind thing, for the CD thing, which is a cute little addition that most people these days wouldn't use it for.
yeah. Like for fighting games, the workaround they usually did was they would make, I think it's P, would become the sixth button, and you just kind of have to awkwardly stretch your thumb over to have that one extra button.
Yeah. Though I hope though if those games hopefully let you um change the button configuration, it would probably help a lot.
Yeah. Speaking of controller, so you mentioned the D-pad being small. Actually, the next controller I want to talk about, I'm going to send it over to you in the Discord chat. Um, so this is the Gold Star
Ah, yes,
interpretation,
yes.
which is interestingly they had Gold Star had decided to go for their own radical interpretation of the 3DO controller, and it's hard to tell by pictures, but that thing is huge. Like it is almost, it's actually like slightly thicker than a Genesis controller, but it's like slightly thinner, I guess you could say, like widthwise.
It looks like a third party Genesis controller.
Yeah, it is massive. The buttons are not as great. The D-pad is huge, but feels super cheap.
It looks
And
it, it looks as stiff as like a gas station button.
yeah, it's not great. I do actually own one of these. I should have grabbed it, but it's in storage somewhere. I forgot to dig it out.
Yeah, and then
Um,
those like shoulder buttons are like chonkers on the top of it.
yeah, ironically, they're probably the least offensive part of this controller. Like they just kind of exist. Like they're not good, but they're not like Saturn Model 1 like where they just don't work.
Yeah, and it's like, why are the buttons angled like in like the worst way possible? You know, because the way you're holding it, your thumb is going to naturally go, you know, to the bottom right to upper left, right? That's where
Yeah.
your thumb's going to naturally lay on a controller. So who the fuck decided, oh, let's have the buttons face the opposite direction?
Yeah, it was. It's like literally, it's like the meme. It's like, here's my homework, but change it just enough so that you don't get in trouble.
It kinda, because at least with the Panasonic one, you can rest your thumb on B, and then you could
Yep.
just kind of rock it over to C and A when you need it. You know what I mean? Like there's not a huge amount of movement. Whereas with that one, it just looks ridiculous. Like it feels like they were thinking, oh, if we put them in, aligned with the thumb, everyone's just gonna push all the buttons at once or something like
Yeah,
that. But no,
it's
no.
yeah. Gold Star. So one of my goals for eventually is I want to track down a Gold Star 3DO because they're pieces of shit, but apparently they're kind of cool at the same time as well.
Yeah.
And I'd like to just like see because apparently everything about the console just feels cheap in comparison.
Oh, I believe it.
But other than that,
There's a Mad Catz 3DO controller.
oh, I'm sure there is. um,
Yeah, I'll send you a picture of it.
when you do that, I'm going to send you another controller. This one's probably one of the most famous third-party controllers. Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, it says Mad Catz right on there.
Oh, I have that in my my selection. So actually, we'll talk about that one now.
Is it mediocre like everything Mad Catz?
It honestly, it looks so. I've obviously never used one of these personally, but it looks fine. Probably
Yeah,
feels really cheap. It's got a
like most
whole.
Mad Catz controllers.
It's got an array of 6 turbo buttons.
Every button is a turbo button. Excuse me. Every
That
button
is
is a turbo button.
so. What I find really interesting is this controller is set up. So if anyone wants to like play along, you can easily just look up Mad Catz 3DO controller. You'll find this thing.
Or you can go to the website I'm using, which is archive3do.com/controllers-2.
Okay, that
That's what
also
I'm
works
using.
as well.
Because then you
I
can
might
just look at that.
I might try to I might include that in the description for the
Yeah.
video.
Yeah, they have a flight stick.
Oh yeah, we'll be talking about that. So one thing that's really interesting about this controller is its layout is bizarre. So they tried to do the fighting game configuration of 6 buttons, and I notice they got A, B, and C down there. They also have L, R, and P. But at the
Yeah.
same time, P is also the pause button, and then it still has the bumpers. So it's like they have like multiple buttons configured in different setups. Like
It's a 10 it says 8 button control pad, though correct me if I'm wrong, that's 10 buttons. So they didn't even count right. Unless they're not counting the other X and P, which then by that token, why are you counting the other L and R?
Yeah, I don't know. They're probably not counting the start and select buttons or X and P.
I can't imagine why they ran out of business.
Rock Band 4, that's why. What's funny too is it has literally the most useless thing ever in the form of slow mode, which I think certain games it worked, but the majority of games it just was. It basically all it did was make the game go pause and start like over and over.
Yeah, like because how it's set up, it just looks really annoying.
Yeah, it's not great. I've never held one though. I actually might want to track one of these down because I'm curious how it actually works as a fighting game controller.
Yeah. There's one on here called the Sidekick, and it literally is a Genesis 6-button controller. Like it's the exact same shape.
I think I know which one you're talking about. The one I'm going to send you next though is actually designed for fighting games, and it's one of the more well-known and also bizarrest looking controllers of all time.
I think I know the one.
That is the Capcom fighting game controller because
I really want to get this.
I'm looking for one. I have not ever seen one like cheap. That's the problem.
I've seen them on eBay here and there, and yeah, they are pricey.
So
didn't Capcom make this?
Yes, because they knew for a fact playing. So That's the biggest tragedy of all time is Street Fighter 2 on the 3DO is until the Arcade Perfect ports came out years later, this was notably the best version of Street Fighter 2 on a console for a long period of time.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
problem wasn't it had
here's one from Japan. 61.75 plus $20 shipping, and it's from Japan. It says it works.
I mean,
and I
system's region free altogether, so I bet it works. But
all right, I may grab this then.
Go for it,
because I need to hold this thing in my hand because
that
it looks so bizarre, but yet from what I've heard from people, it's actually like really comfortable.
So to best describe this controller, it looks like they cut a GameCube controller in half and then melted it in the sun, and then that's what was left.
Honestly, it looks like the D-pad half looks like a flight stick. Like that's probably how you hold it. And then they just kind of put like a jelly bean with buttons right next to it. So it's like it looks like you're like, how do I hold this thing? But I imagine when you have one in your hands, it's like, oh, that actually makes sense.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? If there was like the traditional arcade joystick where the D-pad is.
Sorry to interrupt. It's they only have one. The sale ends in like 4 hours, so I think I need to. If I want to do this, I need to make the plunge.
What I was going to say though is, if you were to put like an arcade style joystick where the D-pad is, it actually kind of looks like an arcade cabinet setup. Like those buttons remind me a lot of the ones you'd see on an old arcade like setup.
Yeah, it does.
It's from what I've heard, it is extremely comfortable. Like Capcom actually designed this thing to play Street Fighter, essentially.
Yeah. So it says I should get this by the end of the month. Because Japan. So probably when I get it, I'm going to forget I get it. But anyways, so yeah, the Street Fighter 2 episode will be much later.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I might try to find one of these alternative options that supposedly also works.
Yeah. Well, and also Street Fighter 2 Turbo is expensive on here as well.
Yeah, it shot up a lot recently.
Yeah, because it's like a really good version. So
there's a retro store that has a copy. I'll go see how much it is and I'll let you know.
Okay, because checking on here, a good copy of just the jewel case is like $90.
This might have been disc only, so I'll have to look, but I swear I saw a copy of it recently.
Yeah, discs only are a little bit cheaper. And it's like, do I really need all the other stuff? Like, it'd be nice, but you know how it is.
Yeah. So this controller is probably the most famous alternative 3DO controller, mostly because the company that made it literally made it just because they knew for a fact that the main controller wasn't going to work for their game.
Is it the only controller Capcom's ever made?
I think they've made other ones. This is the most unique one I can think of, though, just because it was literally because the base controller the company made for their system doesn't work right for their game.
Let's see. Oh, they made one for. It says they made one for the Genesis, and it's the exact same one as the 3DO one.
Oh, that's cool.
But it has the little Genesis port, so obviously it won't work on the 3DO.
So what's fun though is there was another company that made 3DOs technically, and they were the Creative Labs 3DO Blaster, which was, for those who don't know, it was literally a PC card that you would put in an old DOS computer, and it lets you play 3DO games on your PC. Basically acting like a kind of like a graphics card in a way.
Yeah.
They're absurdly expensive, but apparently it's a really cool thing if you can find one. But it came stock with quite possibly the worst 3DO controller ever made. Debatably, there's a lot of options for this category, but I'll send it to you now. This thing is abysmal.
That looks like
the Batman logo.
It looks like a gadget you'd use in like Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
When I saw it, I thought it was a battery.
Or like Battlestar Galactica or something. It just has that like sci-fi look to it.
So for those who don't know, this thing looks uncomfortable to hold just visually. like it has like sharp edges, which is a weird design choice. The
Yeah.
D-pad looks kind of reminds me of the original Xbox, the Duke D-pad in a way. Although that's probably better than this thing.
Yeah, like the Duke D-pad looks worse than this, but it's probably more functional.
Yeah. And then the buttons, why are they lined up like that? Like
And
that just
they're a triangle, if you're curious, everybody. B is on the top in the center, and then below it is A and C like that. Which, yeah, like that's some Illuminati shit, and it just looks like just the worst idea. Like
and
if there was a D at the bottom of it and it made the traditional diamond, it would be fine.
so the problem too with this is also the way this picture is angled, I can't see the triggers or the bumpers. So I'm not even sure if they're there. I assume they are, but who knows?
Let's see. Oh, here's yeah. Oh, here's I found a on that archive 3DO. There is another picture of it from a different angle, so you can get a better look at that awful D-pad, but you can't see the shoulder buttons.
Huh. They've got to
So,
be there.
there's a box, and the box shows the thing here. Let me just show you, so you see what I mean. Because if that is what the shoulder button looks like, oh my god! Like if
oh
you
no.
you can kind
Okay.
of see it, yeah.
So there's a YouTuber named Lazy Game Reviews. He actually reviewed the 3DO Blaster, and he used this controller during it, and it's coming back to me now. That is the shoulder button, and it's not good.
It's just like a normal button that you
Yeah,
put on the shoulder. Like they took that too seriously.
I like how it's called the 3DO Speed Pad.
What? Yeah, you have to do speed to like this,
To figure it out.
basically. And I see some like more, but anyways, I see more like fighting sticks, like traditional fighting sticks. Um, there's one that, oh my god, it has like it's a third party pad, but it has like the little screw in joystick in the middle of a D pad. You know?
Yes, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's like, why? Like
That was a thing that companies like did for a while there. Like I remember
they're like it gives you the feel of a joystick, and it's like no, it does not. It's a D pad.
there's like that one CDI controller that has that fucking stick sticking out of it, and it's like this is terrible.
Yeah, but at least with this 3DO one, it hopefully it's like a screw in one because that's what it looks like, but I have no idea. But
That's
it's like
what
yeah,
the
but it
Atari
doesn't give you the
78
feel of a joystick. It's so stupid.
that's what the Atari 7800 controller did. It had the option to screw in one of those things.
Oh, like the weird European
Yeah.
D-pad one. Yeah, because the one they had was like an actual joystick with the two buttons on the side, and you hold it like it's like it's your dick or something.
Yeah. It's such a weird design choice.
Yeah,
I sent you one of the fight sticks, and it's not a bad design, but it's also
I
just
mean,
a fight. It's a fight stick.
yeah, the thing's fucking massive, like all fight sticks are.
Looks like it works.
There's one here that it's smaller, and I don't know if it's any better or not, but I think it's a third party one. And it doesn't look bad though.
No, that actually looks like, other than the it not having the proper fighting setup, it looks pretty good from a design
Yeah.
standpoint.
Yeah, it even has the headphone jack, which is nice.
Oh yeah, most
And it has the 3DO logo on it, so it might have been officially sanctioned.
possibly.
It's
Honestly,
weird.
it probably was.
It's weird to think anything 3DO is like third party when it feels like they were so open to other companies doing stuff that they probably would have let any rando make a third party controller or something. But
I think they honestly did because it's like I believe literally anybody could like apply for a 3DO license. Like you didn't even have to make the consoles. I think you could just license like the hardware and then make controllers if you wanted.
yeah, because a lot of these boxes for the 3DO controllers have the logo on it. Not all of them, but a lot of them do.
Like this thing that looks like the Batman logo.
Yeah, that looks like the Batman logo. Apparently,
It's so thick.
yeah.
No reason.
Yeah, I'm sure you know this, but apparently there was a 3DO mouse.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think what fucking game would use the 3DO mouse.
Uh, Good question. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah,
Honestly,
there's no Mario Paint on here. Well, to be fair, the Incredible Machine, I feel like that was also a PC game. So, and when I've played of it, I'm like, oh yeah, this could work with a mouse, no problem. But is that version programmed to use the mouse? I have no idea.
maybe some of the FMV games, possibly.
Maybe, but let's be honest, the best controller for this console is I'm gonna send it to you. Is this guy right
Oh, the
here?
revolver, the bright orange revolver.
Because what does it say on the chamber?
American game gun.
Yeah, American Laser Games game gun. You use this for Mad Dog McCree
Mad Dog
and
McCree.
Crime Patrol. They also did Crime Patrol.
See, this is like post NES, so like all the guns are like painted bright orange and like look at
But
nothing like a gun.
but it still is shaped like a revolver.
Yeah.
Whereas if they did this now, it wouldn't look like a gun. It would just look like it would look like a Nerf gun.
It would look like the Sega like phaser gun that they had.
Like do you remember, I forget which, it was one of the Cabela's for like the 360. It came with like a gun controller,
Yeah.
which was like, honestly, it was like really bad, but it didn't look anywhere near like a gun. It honestly just looked like a Nerf gun.
Yep. Meanwhile, like you go back to like the fucking Odyssey and it had a fucking rifle that came with it.
Oh, I love that thing. And then AVGN shoots his TV with it.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
And all of those old like arcade things had like these fucking really realistic looking guns, and it's like wow, it was like such a different time.
Such a different time. Because even now, with like arcade machines that have guns, they don't try to make them realistic at all, despite the fact that like it's an arcade. Like that gun's not going anywhere. But
Yeah.
it is what it is. You know, we've all played Area 51.
Yep. Oh man. You know what's sad though is like those you can find the 3DO gun pretty cheap, I believe, but you can't use it on a modern TV, which sucks.
Yeah, yeah, because light gun technology stuff. Yeah, I can't use it on this guy behind me, which is a shame because I actually would play Mad Dog McCree on that. But when we eventually do our Mad Dog McCree episode, I'm going to spoiler alert, I'm going to be playing the Wii version because
Yeah, I'm
some
probably
for
gonna
some
write that down.
yeah, because for some of you who don't know, the Mad Dog McCree trilogy, yes, there were 3 of them, got a Wii port back in the day. In fact, when Game Grumps, because we were talking about Game Grumps earlier, when they were playing Mad Dog McCree, they were playing the Wii version,
Hmm.
which seems to be the way to go nowadays if you want to play that kind of game.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we did that.
I sent another fun third party controller.
I love that all these third party controllers, they all kind of look the same. You know, it's like, you know, we have 3DO at home and then they mix that with like they all have to have the turbo and like slow options. And they're always just like these weird looking just little switches in the middle. Like every third party controller from this era looks just like that.
This one looks like it also has the option to put one of those annoying thumbsticks on the D-pad.
Oh yeah, the little screw hole. Yeah.
The D-pad's also recessed in this like concave circle, which is I wonder how deep that is because that looks like a pain in the ass to play. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, like it's so weird to think. You would think we've come so much farther in game controller technology these days, but it's weird to like the third party controllers had a bit of a renaissance in the Switch era. You know, because you think during PS4 or Xbox One, nobody was talking about third party controllers, like, or even in the 360 PS3 era. Like, not really. You just kind of used the controllers that they came with because those were the better ones, right? And then, I mean, the Wii third party controllers, oh, those are a hoot. There's a lot of fun ones there. And then the Wii U didn't really have any. And then the Switch, like, there's been so many third party controllers with the Switch. It's been ridiculous. Like, I mean, hell, like 8-Bit Do, you know, a third party controller company, but these controllers are good.
Mm,
You know, it feels like we've gotten to that point where some third party controllers are genuinely really, really good because they're made for like emulation essentially.
yeah,
But then you see some that are just like old times. They're just terrible. Like, why does this exist? You know?
yeah.
And then and then for me, probably the best third party controller is the wireless Logitech PS2 controller. I don't have one with me, but that thing was phenomenal. I liked it a lot more than the original.
So what's funny too is like we haven't brought this up, but one thing that all of these third party controllers have, other than the gun for obvious reasons, is they all include that controller port built into the controller.
Well, they had to.
Yep. And what's hilarious is they're all compatible with each other. So you can create this long abomination chain of just madness and play it on the 3DO.
You ever see the human centipede? It probably looks like that.
Yeah. The human centipad.
Do, do you think the do you think the like the fight sticks have the daisy chain on it?
I don't know. They're like maybe an exception. I something tells me they probably do. Because
I
like
would I would love if the American Laser Games gun had it. That would be
I know
amazing.
just like random a gun in the middle of the chain. Like
No, yeah, and then like the controller port is like the little hole, like the end of the barrel. You just plug it right into there. That would be
yep.
amazing. But you know, we're not allowed nice things like that.
No, that would be too insane for the time.
But yeah, it's not as like crazy detailed as far as like third party controllers or controllers in general as say some of the other consoles of its era. But there are still some weird oddities in there, you know, and it shows I think how much of a Wild West gaming in the 90s kind of was, and that it was becoming a big deal, but it wasn't standardized, you know. It felt like once we hit the PS2 era, it's like yeah, gaming is kind of it's standardized now, you know.
Yeah.
Like not a lot of companies go out of their way to try to enter the market anymore
No.
because they know what's going to happen.
I think we've learned too is when they do like I think Google learned that it's not as easy as they expected.
Yeah, Stadia was like I'm told Stadia worked really well. They just didn't really know what they were doing.
No.
And then I think Amazon's trying it with Luna, and that's probably going to die as well. Though Apple Arcade seems to be doing really well. And
So
I'm surprised.
Apple is doing it the way that a company should because a lot of people always go, why doesn't Apple make a console? And I always say because they did in the 90s and it sucked.
The Pico.
Yeah.
That
But
that's a
just,
that's a whole thing.
Steve Jobs hated it so much the second he came back to Apple, he killed it off and got rid of it.
I really don't blame him because that thing looks like a absolute disaster.
The only thing I would ever want to play on the Pico is Marathon, and I'm pretty sure there's better ways to play Marathon at this point.
Oh, the Pippin, not the Why did I think it was the Pico? It's the Pippin.
Oh no, the Pico's the Sega thing.
That's right. That was the Pico was the Genesis that was like a kid's toy.
The Proto Elite Pad.
Yeah. I've always wanted one of those.
It's basically it's just a Genesis with the weird cartridges, and apparently it's surprisingly like pretty cool.
Yeah. Did they put Echo Junior on that thing? Because when I played Echo Junior, it's like this is definitely a Pico kind of game. Because I don't know if you've played Echo Junior, but it's actually my favorite of the Echo games.
It's the
And
easiest Echo game by far.
yeah, and it's cool that when you like bump into like sea creatures, it shows you a picture and it gives you a little description. It's like, oh, I'm actually learning about the sea.
I've played a bit of Echo Junior. My favorite part about it is if you play it on the Genesis, the soundtrack is fucking terrifying for no reason.
It is.
Oh boy.
But yeah,
But
the Apple Pippin, that thing didn't really that didn't take off. I mean, why would it, you know?
made in partnership with Bandai.
Oh,
Apple
Bandai.
Bandai Pippin.
Oh boy. And then there's Gadget, Adventure, Travel and Adventure, which has gotten ports. But oh, it's on my phone. Oh, there we go. That's better. But yeah, with like Apple, as I think we were trying to say with Apple, is they have Apple Arcade, which has been doing really well for them. And it's I find it weird, as far as I know, they haven't made like a dedicated Apple Arcade box yet. or like
They
just like one of
probably,
those little ones you just plug in the back of your TV, like a USB stick? Because I would buy that.
you know what it is? They've probably just seen all the other companies that have tried it, and they've just kind of been like, it's working for us right now. Why bother jeopardizing it?
I mean, I feel like it'd just be so easy. It's just to make a little Fire Stick.
Mm,
That's like oh, you can use the App Store to play Apple Arcade games. They give you a Fire Stick and a controller. I think the issue would be the controller because this
yeah,
Apple real like. Do I trust Apple to design a good video game controller? No.
yeah. I mean, we
Like
saw the
if I
Pippin.
Yeah, I mean, even nowadays, like I remember, using my iPod and trying to play games on that click wheel. That didn't really work out too well. Um,
No.
like if I could Bluetooth like my Series X controller to it, then I'd probably be just fine.
Yeah, like you can do on a phone, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Because that seems to be the biggest issue with gaming in a lot of ways is that like the controller seems to be from what I've gathered, the hurdle for like some casual people.
Hmm.
That it, I'm sure you've had that scenario where you give somebody who doesn't really play video games, you give them a controller, right? And then they look at it and they're like, "What is this?"
Yeah,
It's like this just conglomerate of sticks and buttons, and it's like, "What do I do with this thing?" But like for us, we know this. Like this is nothing.
yeah.
We've had this in our hands since we were tiny little babies, so we know. And it's always funny to see somebody hold it and not know what they're doing with it. You
See,
know.
that's partially why the Wii was so successful, is because that was such an easy thing for people to grasp.
Yeah, you take I had my Wiimote right here. You just take it and you shake the thing, you jerk the thing, you push buttons occasionally. It is a well-designed controller for what it is.
Now,
I
there's a
keep saying
reason.
I keep saying Wiimote even though it is technically Wii Remote.
Yeah, I think that they've even Nintendo's just kind of accepted Wiimote at this point.
Cuz it sounds like that's what they would have named it anyways.
Yeah, the Wiimote, and then Rick from Pixel Project referred to the nunchuck as the Wii Chuck once, and I can't unthink of that now.
The Wii check. I love that. The
For
Nunwee. I love it.
like he said that, and I was like, I can't unhear that. That's going to be it for now. The Wii Chuck.
The Wiimote
Shout
and
out,
the Wii Chuck.
shout out to Rick, by the way. But
Hey Rick. Hey Rick, how you doing? Go listen to Lost Odyssey, everybody.
yeah. Thinking about it though, like that's basically a good smorgasbord of controllers for the 3DO. There's hundreds more of these things. Like,
Yeah, but they're all kind of the same thing, And it's
yeah,
sort of like third party controllers. They do the job, but it never feels right. I think N64 third party controllers that's fun.
yeah,
Those are
it's
funny
just
to look at.
making the controller normal.
Trying to, I think, and then some they're just awful. Um, but yeah, like I find the standard 3DO controller like passable for what it is. When you compare it to its two big brothers, it just doesn't. It's not nearly the same as far as the quality, in my opinion.
Yeah,
But it gets the job done. It's far from the worst controller I've ever held. I mean, call me crazy, but I don't hate the Atari Jaguar controller, for example.
I mean,
But
aside from the telephone pad on it, the controller itself is fine.
yeah, but like I'll say this one's better than the Intellivision and the ColecoVision.
Yeah,
I
because
can safely say that.
it's better than the CDI controllers, plural. Um,
Oh yeah. Oh god. I don't think I've ever seen a CDI in person.
I saw
Ever.
one at a convention that was about it. It wasn't even the Philips one. It was the Magnavox one that actually looks like a video game console.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one. That's like the top loader. Yeah, I've seen that
Yeah,
one. Yeah,
the one that kind of,
it looks like you had an AI generate a video game console.
yeah, it's very basic standard. Um, I've seen one of those in real life. That's about it. I've never seen one of the fucking VCR looking CDIs ever.
The massive beast.
Yeah. Oh boy. I don't even think I'd want to collect CDI because like
It's way too expensive. I've
it's
seen
too
the prices. It is ridiculous.
it's too expensive, and there's like 3, 4 games that are worth playing on it, and that's a stretch. The term worth playing, by the way. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, like the CDI probably has the one game I'd want to play on it is its version of Jeopardy. and it's because they actually got Alex Trebek to like do a bunch of like recorded footage of him, and he also reads off every clue, and there's like hundreds of clues in that game. So it's like the most involved Trebek has ever been in a Jeopardy video game, which is kind of impressive actually. Because it's not like, say, was it like the Wii 360 era where they had like that weird deformed Trebek that almost looked like a me, you know?
Yeah.
And then the modern ones are just like nothing, like the Ubisoft Jeopardy, it's just
See,
kind of dull.
my favorite is the Super Nintendo Jeopardy with the Jeopardy was Trebek, right?
Yes.
Where it's like his sprite pops up on screen and it like they animated the mouth flapping and it looks horrible.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, that's a classic one.
Yeah, someone's selling a CDI tested with games for $200.
That's actually not that bad. That's about what you get. That's about what a 3DO goes for.
Well, the games they have with it are some bangers. Rand McNally's America U.S. Atlas, Pecos Bill, Compton's Interactive Encyclopedia, Tell Me Why 2, Textiles, Tell Me Why 1, and my personal favorite, How the Camel Got His Hump.
But no Flowers of Robert Mapplethorpe.
I actually really like Robert Mapplethorpe because, like, not to deviate from that, but it's funny that he has that CDI game about flowers, but if you actually look into his career, he's more known for shooting like New York BDSM scene in like the 80s,
I love that joke, joke where I just love the AVGN joke where he hypes that up like every time he brings up the CDI, and then he finally played it on one of his Christmas episodes and it's literally just flowers and he's just like he like doesn't know how to react to it.
It's pleasant.
Yeah, it's pretty funny actually. It was a good joke.
Yeah, it's so weird to think that like that guy also, the same guy who did all that other kind of BDSM stuff,
Yeah,
but we're all multifaceted, aren't we?
So I guess to wrap this up though, I did want to mention so obviously like it's funny how there's so many options for 3DO controllers, but in reality the best option is the original one.
Yes.
The only exception I'd say is debatably the Capcom one, just because of how apparently it's tailor-made for fighting games. So I'm very curious. But aside from that one, most of the third-party ones are bad. Just
well, I did order one during the show, so when I get it, I'll let you all know how I feel about it. I'll probably just end up playing some games on it in general, just to see how it is. And then when I eventually get Street Fighter for it, then we'll play it properly. And who knows? Maybe I'll become a Street Fighter fan.
Maybe. It's a very good port of Street Fighter. That's all I'll say.
Oh, for sure. It's just I'm more of a Mortal Kombat guy when it comes to fighting games.
That's fair. We'll be talking about a Mortal Kombat clone at some point as well. That's for sure.
If you were saying they secretly ported Mortal Kombat to this thing, I would have lost it. I think they were. It was Mortal Kombat 2.
Mortal Kombat 2 is in the process right now. I believe it's pretty close. There's a homebrew version, but
well, I thought they were like legit trying to do it.
I'll have to look into that because I know
back in the day.
I think so. I'll have to read the project updates because they've been sharing them a lot lately on the 3DO Reddit.
Nice.
So, but yeah, so next week we'll be, like we said earlier, we'll be covering Icebreaker, getting back into normal 3DO content. It's fun to do like a little side episode every now and then, just talking about how fucking weird the 3DO is and why it's awesome.
For real.
But yeah, so other than that, guys, once again, thanks for joining us for the 3DO Experience. You can find the 3DO Experience on all the major podcasting platforms. You can find all of our links at Linktree / the Who Games. And yeah, other than that, you can join the GNC Podcast Network Discord server to talk all things 3DO, GNC, Geek Addicts, talk anime, gaming, all that fun stuff. And Thrak, you've also got your King Crimson podcast, right?
That's right. Yeah, I have the Frame by Frame podcast about King Crimson. We did the Starless episode, and we're in the works on the next episode, which will be basically between Starless and Elephant Talk. We'll talk about the JG Bennett stuff and Hell's Kitchen and exposure and all that crap. There's a lot there to talk about. And also, me and Bill were just recently on an episode of Super Pod Saga talking about Japanese exclusive games. So y'all should listen to that. It's that was a fun time. Like I've actually re-listened to that episode twice because it was so funny.
All I can say is sucking the pants off monkeys. You'll understand as you listen.
Yeah. What I love about SuperPod is that it's so freeform and that we can just kind of riff about whatever, and Aaron just kind of goes with it. So that's what I love.
The best is when Aaron brings together a big group and then he just struggles to keep control of said big group as it goes on.
Exactly.
It's great. You'll probably be hearing from us on SuperPod in the future at some point. Probably frequently.
Oh yeah. Most likely. We should get Aaron on here. Does he know what the 3DO even is? Aaron, do you know what the 3DO is? You tell us.
I've invited him 3 times. Let's just say he knows.
Aaron,
it'll happen. It'll happen someday.
Come on, buddy. Do you want to be on the Plumbers Don't Wear Ties episode?
That'll be a full house because Alex wants in on that too.
Oh, is she coming on for that one?
I think she might. So we'll see.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I gotta remember that port comes out in March, right?
Yes, supposedly. We'll see.
I have a feeling it's gonna stay. At least I hope.
I'm more worried if Limited Run's gonna make it that far, but
oh, you think they're gonna file for bankruptcy or something?
I don't know. There's been all those companies making those like limited edition games haven't been doing great lately. I know Limited Run's probably the healthiest out of all of them, but you never know.
Well, I think it helps that they also publish a lot of games digitally as well.
Yes.
Which is probably what I like about them most, is that they don't restrict these to just the physical copies. So,
but
anyways, we're going over, aren't we?
Yeah. Once again, though, guys, thank you all for listening, and we will see you all later.
Bye-bye.